On this week's episode of TechSNAP, extending your local LAN to your remote office workers, Zynga's embarrassing Apache error, and monitoring the monitoring service. Then a big batch of your questions, our answers, and much, much more on this week's episode of TechSNAP. Hi everyone, and welcome to TechSNAP. This is episode 117 of Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly systems network and administration podcast. We stream this episode live on July 4th, 2013. This episode's brought to you by GoDaddy.com. I'll tell you more about them as the show goes on. And Ting.com. Go to TechSNAP.Ting.com. We'll tell you more about Ting as the show goes on. And the live stream is powered by the incredible Scale Engine over at ScaleEngine.com. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Mr. Alan Jude. Hey there, Alan.
Hey, Chris, everybody. Thanks for watching.
Hey, Alan. Well, happy belated Canada Day to you. And
Yes.
Happy 4th of July, Independence Day, to all of our audience in the States. I got to warn everybody up front. I live in a fireworks town. The town I live in has a Native American reservation, and that reservation is known for making some of the most outrageous fireworks in the area. They manufacture them there, and so we have these legitimate fireworks stands, by the grocery stores that are kind of iconic, and they sell these very average, run-of-the-mill fireworks. Then we have the reservation, where you can go crazy, blow your arm off stuff, and that culture is in my town here. So if you hear things that sound like fireworks or gunshots, those are indeed fireworks, or neighbors mowing the lawn because they have the day off. The TechSNAP program, however, does not. We continue on, Alan.
Yes.
And I
haven't had a day off in a long time.
It's only a holiday for one half of the show, so it's not fair to take the day off. All right, well, that's good, too, because we have a huge show this week. Tons of great, awesome feedback and a lot of news to get to. So, Alan, why don't we start with this interesting headline here, Monitoring the Monitors. I have a few ideas.
Yes.
What's this about?
Basically, it was something I was directed to by some people I know on Twitter. It's an article out of the Usenix conference. And basically, it's some interesting things that raise questions about how do you monitor your monitoring system to make sure you're getting notified when your monitoring system monitors that there's a problem. Right?
Right. Sorry.
I was doing that on purpose. Sorry.
I lost you for just a sec when you... So I'm sorry. I missed you.
Yeah. But yeah, when you have a monitoring system and it tells you when something's wrong,
right?
When you go a long time without hearing anything, does that mean that everything's okay?
Right, yeah.
Or that your monitoring system is also broken?
Right, yep. I know exactly what you mean.
It's kind of like that little thing. It's like, I haven't got a lot of email today. I better check that email is actually working.
And the one time I had that happen to me, I was like, I actually was like, man, this is a great day. I haven't gotten too much email. I haven't been getting texts back when I did a lot of client services. And I thought, finally, one of those mornings where I'm really going to focus in on, something I've been meaning to do. No, my Google account had been turned off, and everything hadn't been coming in because I had everything in Google services, voice, Google, email, everything. And so, it turned out my services were down. So a lot of times when I don't get an alert from, whatever the monitoring service might be, I'll log in and check and see what's going on. And I almost think that some people leave really obnoxious little minor alerts about maybe some backup that always has a bad file and it always alerts, but you let it anyways. It's because it's almost like a heartbeat. You ever have that?
Yep. Exactly. And so that's what this article is about, right? So it breaks down the different monitoring systems based on automated versus manual execution. Right? So automated would be, it does something all the time, whereas manual is, hey, I haven't got an email today. I'm going to check and make sure that there's not something broken, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then there's automated versus manual response, right? When something is detected, does that something happen automatically, or does somebody have to go and do something about it? And then there's also, destructive versus non-destructive responses. And then monitoring versus monitoring of the notification service. Right? So, for example, if you look at something like a dead man switch, right, from a movie or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And the guy's holding the button, and if he lets go, it's going to explode and kill him and everybody else or whatever, right?
Right.
The general idea being that if you try to kill the guy with the dead man switch, it causes the explosion to happen anyway.
Right.
So
we all remember Terminator 2, Alan. Of course, you don't have to remind me.
Oh, I haven't seen that one, but anyway.
All right, Alan.
I'm just making fun of it.
Okay. Because, that's a really important movie to see. I just want you to know that.
an example with a dead man switch, that's an example of an automated execution, right? Because releasing the trigger happens automatically when you shoot the guy that's holding the trigger.
When the heart stops or when the finger drops or whatever.
Yeah. And then it's also an automatic response. Once you let go, nothing else has to happen before boom.
Right.
All right. And obviously that would be destructive versus non-destructive response.
Right.
But, people have things like this as well where, for example, we saw with WikiLeaks somewhat, but also with some of the other ones more recently, where, it was, if I don't check in with every 30 days, if something happens to me or whatever, then the decryption key for this encrypted document, which I've spread all over the internet, will come out. So if anything happens to me, then the situation you're trying to prevent, which is this secret information getting out, will happen anyway.
Yeah.
Right? So you can have some kind of monitoring system like that where something doesn't happen within a certain period of time, then something else happens.
Not to make it political, but supposedly Edward Snowden has stated that if, regardless of what happens to him, the information has supposedly been distributed in some sort of encrypted fashion that if he goes away, the means to decrypt it becomes available. Some kind of kill switch or activation switch, whatever you want to call it, comes into play.
Exactly.
So that's ripped right out of modern day headlines, Alan.
But another complication with monitoring systems is how do you monitor the notification service, right? So if your Nagios or whatever is set up to send you a text message, Nagios doesn't know if you got that text message.
Right.
And how do you make sure that you're getting the text messages?
You could see how maybe a smartphone app could do, like, a monitoring system sends a push notification to a smartphone app and you acknowledge it within that app, and then it reports back to the monitoring service. So you can see how technology can solve it.
I bring up something even a little less intricate than that.
Okay.
But yeah. So, if a sysadmin gets notified that a service is down by a text message, how do you ensure they actually get the text message?
Yeah.
One solution would be basically to keep sending the text message, repeatedly until they acknowledge it in some way or something. But, they also talk about this in the document. They're like, one solution they talked about was each morning when, the on-duty person changes, whoever's got the pager that day or whatever gets a message saying, your system's working or whatever. So like as part of the shift change, there's this message that at shift change, if you don't get the message, then you have to investigate and figure out why the monitoring is not working. Yeah, kind of
like a check-in.
Yeah.
Chris Fisher here, checking in. All systems are green. Over.
Right. The problem with a system like that is it's possible to miss an event like that, especially if it's become routine, right? If you're, say, the only sysadmin or whatever, and you get a text message at 9 a.m. every morning saying, good morning, everything's working. Well, after, years of this, one day you don't get it. Do you necessarily notice that you didn't get it? Right?
No.
Especially if you're busy.
Not
right?
Generally. I don't pay much attention to it. If it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So I might just...
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's why that might not be the best solution. So, one solution that I thought of was something along the lines of you send that text message to the on-duty admin or whoever's starting their shift, and that text message includes a URL that they have to visit, right? Because you can just click on a URL and text message and it takes you to the page or whatever.
Right. So it pops right up in the browser.
And that acknowledges the message. And if the message isn't acknowledged, then the alert repeats and also escalates. Maybe message someone else saying, hey, so-and-so's not responding. Or maybe even to the point where the sysadmin who's going off shift can't leave until the message has been acknowledged by the person who's coming on shift. Right?
Interesting.
So there's always somebody.
Yeah. There's always a clear handoff.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So basically you have to have that handoff. Right? It kind of reminds me of that scene from Star Trek, TNG or whatever, where the other captain comes to the Enterprise, relieves Jean-Luc Picard, and Picard has to say, I stand relieved. There's this whole formal process for changing.
And then they transfer command codes and the computer acknowledges Yeah.
So having something like that every day so that there's two people involved in making sure that this happens every time.
You could see systems like that would need to come into play, and I bet a lot of military systems are like this, where they're having I saw a lot of systems where you have
for the ship example is more that there has to be a clear delineation of who's in charge when
responsible, right?
Yeah, they can't be two captains ever because that would just
Right. There needs to be one owner of the particular problem if you're switching off in between. Yeah. That's interesting.
So
I like the URL idea.
Yeah, but it basically raises a lot of questions that just give you something to think about. And like, how do I know that my monitoring system is actually monitoring things?
So what do you do? What do you do?
Well, there's a couple things. A second Nagios that monitors the first is always useful.
Yeah. Do you run like any monitoring from your house to monitor some of your remote data center systems? So that way you kind of like are checking on them?
Not exactly, but we do have some offsite monitoring from like third-party companies that monitor some of our more important stuff in addition to our own Nagios monitoring.
Yeah.
So that we'll get alerts via multiple channels if there is a problem.
And then that kind of also provides some level of verification if something major is going on, I suppose. Because if you're getting it from both of them, then you're like, oh, crap.
Right, because we've also had the problem where, because my Nagios runs in a jail, one time I forgot to add a setting so that after a reboot it would still apply. And so pings weren't allowed out of the jail. So Nagios
not
decided
totally effective in that scenario.
Nagios decided that everything was down and started
like it can't talk to anything.
No, but it basically alerted on every single thing. I got like 1,500 emails.
I love the alert logic when, well, all right, if this host is down, then that means the services are down on that host, and all this just starts going down the list and then triggers an alert on all of them.
Right, but that can be useful. Like I have it set up so that if a router goes offline, it knows that's why all the machines behind that router are offline.
Right, yeah.
It doesn't try to tell me there's something wrong with this server, because there's probably nothing wrong with that server. The problem is this router that sits in front of it.
Oh, the chat room and their humor. The chat room suggests maybe the NSA could branch Prism off into an alerting and monitoring system to let you know when your services go offline.
Yes.
Tax dollars at work there.
For the third-party monitoring, we use DNS Made Easy because we use their IP failover stuff for our website to make sure no matter what amount of stuff at Scale Engine breaks, the website still works.
Right.
So their monitoring that gets included with that, because they monitor it to decide when to do the IP failover, also has email alerts. So we just use that. But some of our customers use Pingdom, and I don't know to recommend anything specific.
Monitor.us or monitor.us is another good one.
Yeah. Host something, I forget. I used to use.
Don't know.
Yeah.
It's an interesting topic, and it's one to definitely keep in the back of your mind when you're setting up a monitoring system. And it's interesting how many times I walk in and people have like all these places have all these different requirements around the monitoring system, and this particular aspect of it doesn't really get talked about a lot in my experience.
Exactly, and it's going to be one of the most important ones, right?
Yeah. Especially when it really comes down to it and it really matters. And it's funny how that always happens when everybody else is really busy, or it's the 4th of July holiday or something like that. Alan, before we go on, you mind if I stop and thank one of our sponsors this week?
Yes, definitely.
All right. That is GoDaddy.com, longtime sponsors of the TechSNAP program, because they know that you guys are the exact type of professional that they want to reach. And you'd think, Chris and Alan, you guys have had all kinds of great deals on the TechSNAP program for GoDaddy, right? And that would be true. And I would say you, sir, are observant, or ma'am, are observant. Mm-hmm. Good job. But I can't even believe this deal, Alan. We still have our Tech 249 to get your .com for $2.49. Yep. But we have something really special that's just going to be for a short period of time. When you're checking out, if you use the code FREE5 when you check out over at GoDaddy.com, you know what you're going to get? Free private registration for a year with a new .com purchase. FREE5 gets you the free private registration, which generally I always advise people toss on there for their private stuff, like if it's just something for your personal site, something like that, throw that on there and get the free private registration. Use the code FREE5, or just get your own .com for tech. When you use Tech 249, you get it for $2.49. That's a great offer. So thank you to GoDaddy. Just go over there and search for something, whatever it is, a project. Maybe you're collaborating with folks and you want a common place, or maybe you just want to set up your own private redirect for your social profiles. That's what I've done. At several different times, I've used different URLs that just send you to my like my Google Plus profile. It's a real easy way to hand it out when you have some crazy URL, especially if you didn't get a handle. It's super easy. Just go register your own. Use the code Tech249, or use the code FREE5 to get the free private registration, and then you have a real nice, easy way to hand it out. And if you do it right, it can be professional. If you do it wrong, it can at least be funny. So thanks to GoDaddy for sponsoring the TechSNAP program, and thanks to you guys for helping out our sponsors, because it lets them know that you appreciate them keeping us going. It's a great way to keep us on the air. So thanks to GoDaddy for sponsoring TechSNAP. All right, Alan. So the TechSNAP train moves right along, 116 weeks in a row from the start without a single pause. 117. Well, have we finished it yet? No.
We started it, so that's good.
All right, we'll count. Yeah, that's true. You know what? I would release it so far. Like if we had to stop right now to go take a pee or something, I would. I'd just count this. All right. Our next news story sounds like a pipe dream, but I'll hear you out. It's titled "A Secure Processor Architecture." What's going on, Alan?
Yeah. So this is some people from MIT that have basically come up with a hardware architecture specifically for shared environments and so on. So basically, it's a system designed to prevent someone else with access to the system, whether that's just running other software on the system or actually having physical access to it, from determining what other operations are happening on that system. Basically, it has features. The system is called Ascend, and some of the features include obfuscated instruction execution, where it actually, when you're looking at it, it tries to look like it's running every possible instruction at once, so you can't tell which one it's actually doing. It does a little bit of extra work to obfuscate, so you can't tell what it's actually doing.
That's interesting.
And it has like oblivious RAM, it's called, where it randomly accesses different parts of memory in a cycle and tunes when the real memory accesses happen into that, so you can't tell which accesses are real and which ones aren't.
So you
can't look at the pattern of the accesses of the RAM to tell what a program is doing.
So memory randomization right now happens at the operating system level. And this is essentially moving that plus.
Like ASLR and things like that are different.
Okay. Oh, okay.
This isn't
not the same thing.
Moving around where it is in the memory. It's about making it so you can't tell
what memory is being
patterns
accessed?
are happening.
Okay.
Yeah, or just what the pattern of memory access is like.
Right. Okay.
So this seems particularly relevant based maybe on our previous discussion. You remember we talked about the guy did the research with Zen and found that from inside a Zen, he could steal the encryption keys from other machines, other Zen virtual machines running on the same physical host.
Yes.
Basically,
with
by
a
looking at the
CPU, right?
Yeah, he could like look at the CPU cache and see what other stuff was being done by people sharing the same CPU as him. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it was more complicated if it was multi-CPU machine and it was bouncing to different caches and stuff. But it seems like this type of system might be the only way to protect against that. But also, this is more exotic type attacks where someone might actually be trying to hook some kind of spectrum analyzer up to your server to see what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm thinking. It's like, wow, that's a real attack.
This is, really high-end stuff. And, some of the comments on Slashdot are like, well, what good is this if they just compromise the app that's running on it anyway? More machines are compromised because of silly little things than really complicated attacks.
When you think of like an embedded device, or these machines that control dams and something maybe where somebody could get physical access, or maybe this is something that's out at a cell tower out in the boonies, right? Right,
and it's mostly just So if you have encrypted data on there, somebody can't get access to stuff.
Yeah.
It's basically protecting against the much more exotic attacks. And, there's a whole research PDF there, and it's really interesting to read. It just was hard to summarize it all and has little time as I had.
No, I can totally understand that, but it is extremely interesting. They show that they show some of the math in here, which is sort of intimidating a little bit, but interesting nonetheless.
It's real university-level research. Yeah. It's got some crazy stuff in there.
I love it when you find that stuff. I love it. And they have also, did you see the diagram they have in here of how it works? They have like a basic architecture diagram in here. Figure 2, the processor architecture annotated with the parameters and representative latencies that our performance model assumes. So I guess there's some
right. So there have been other systems like this before, but this is the first one that's said to have acceptable levels of performance.
Okay.
Right. It doesn't hurt the performance too much because the random things it does to hide what it's actually doing aren't as onerous.
Uh-huh. That doesn't surprise me that has been a challenge. But interesting.
Yeah. Look like you're not doing something while doing it without being too busy not looking like you're doing it.
Do you think in 5 years it'll be an obvious statement that, like, specialized processors have moved more and more into the data center? Like, you're going to have... Remember we talked about, like, those dedicated varnish rigs that are essentially going down to the ARM processor because of the... they just need something that gets from the NIC to the CPU as fast as possible, so they're going to do, like, these specially built rigs. Do you think we're just going to see more and more of this, and this is just the kind of thing that is going to fill that work role?
I remember AMD talking about this more than 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They were talking about, you'd have this multi-CPU system, and you'd have like 2 general CPUs, and then you'd have one that just ran Java really well,
right,
and one that just did XML really well.
I would suggest, so the difference now is anybody that gets the right licenses can build their own ARM-based system. So you could have vendors who can create whereas AMD controlled all that before, right?
Right.
I don't know. I'm just wondering because I wonder if Intel is losing market share. I mean, Intel doesn't have market share on mobile. You got to wonder in the server space.
I saw an interesting article. I don't have the link handy, but
I'm sure they're doing fine now.
Who was it about? Oh, I think it was actually Apple. I was saying that Apple should have went with Intel and Atom instead of with the TMSC or whatever, which is the company that AMD spun off as the foundry. Mostly because they were having trouble with yields on the really low nanometer.
But you see,
stuff.
Apple's all in on ARM. They bought what was it? Silicon Mechanics. Who did they buy? They bought a big Silicon ARM company, and they have thousands of employees working on ARM designs at Apple. Thousands, it's like a huge number of thousands. So I don't think they're going anywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if Apple eventually starts selling ARM desktops. As crazy as that's going to be. But we'll see. You see all these interesting processor designs. That, to me, just screams embedded. But, all right. Well, I want to talk about this Zynga story. Zynga's been getting a lot of crap. So you saw that on Microsoft.
Well, yeah, but this is more of a story of, server misconfiguration and the things you don't always think about when you're configuring
Out of all of the Zynga stories out there right now, you got the Microsoft guy becoming the CEO. You got all these different stories. The games are tanking. But you found the one sysadmin angle out of all of it. So tell me what's going on.
So basically, when some Zynga users were playing the game on Facebook, every once in a while they might be confronted with an HTTP error 500, which basically just means something's wrong with the server. Typically, it means the server's overloaded. But if it's a CGI script or something, if there's any error, it pops an error 500. And basically, it's a temporary error saying something went wrong on the server. Try again. And that was returned from the server, fb, as in Facebook, .themepark.zynga.com. But it told people that experienced the error that they should email such and such an address at themepark.com and it tells them about the error. The problem is Zynga doesn't actually own themepark.com.
What?
So the error page that comes up was actually the generic Apache error page. Okay. Right? And that automatically puts the email address you set in your Apache configuration.
Yep.
First thing is Zynga apparently uses Apache as their web server.
On CentOS, no less.
Yes. No wonder they're throwing 500 errors under load.
Ouch. Wow. Ouch.
Yeah. But they had a misconfigured server admin directive, which goes in your little vhost and sets the email address to be used in those type of error messages. And they just used, server at themepark.com or something like that. And so users would get this error and email that email address. The unfortunate recipient of these emails was a guy that runs a web design firm at themepark.com.
Oh, man, it sucks to be that guy so
he was
bad.
Getting a lot of email from really whiny Facebook gamers who,
probably are unable to describe what their problem is at that. So.
Yeah, or it's like, I bought a chest and opened it, and then this error came up, and you stole my money or whatever.
Or maybe he's just getting your website's not working. Who knows, right? With the first time, first he's like, oh, wait, this is legit? What's going on? Is my site down?
Yeah. And so he contacted Zynga, but they never got a response.
Surprise. Well, it was Canada Day, Alan. It was Canada Day.
Well, no, it was before that. It's been going on for a couple of weeks anyway.
I got nothing then.
So anyway, he decided to have a little bit of fun with it and started writing back responses to the people that sent him emails describing their problem.
Oh, no.
And some of them were pretty hilarious. So apparently he got one from a Canadian around about Canada Day. And he says, quote, I know that for Canada Day, the engineering department wraps the .ca servers in Canadian flags and then sets a plate of poutine on top. This sometimes can cause the server to overheat and sometimes even get gravy in the login, logout module.
Oh my gosh. Favorite thing ever.
Yeah, and there's a whole bunch like that. Like telling people you need to click more slowly.
Click more slowly.
And click it 5 times.
You're clicking it wrong.
move your mouse more slowly when you first log in,
Wow.
and just a whole bunch of stuff like that. And it's pretty fun.
That is good. I like that one. Well,
They kind of remind me of the letters you see people send in response to boilerplate legal letters they get.
did they ever say how that wrong email address got in there?
Probably because they used an unqualified domain name when they were setting it up, right? When you're setting up an Apache thing and you get that server admin line, like, well, I do not actually want anybody emailing me.
Yeah, I know, but then you just leave it. example@example.com or whatever's in there. They had to change it to something.
Well, they're probably using some graphical configurator that requires them to enter an email address for each vhost, right?
Maybe, yeah. I wonder.
And, it was themepark.zynga.com,
Yeah,
right? So
yeah.
you just use themepark.com or something. So, yeah, they just...
Yeah, that's what I was wondering, is maybe there's a little DNS. Yeah.
They probably didn't realize that email address would show up on the error pages. Honestly, I don't see why Zynga wouldn't have a friendly error page. At least slap the Zynga logo on the template or something.
With a whale or something.
Instead of just the plain Apache Error 500
Bare bones, yeah. I honestly...
It seems like these Error 500s were happening often enough that, a bunch of people were writing email.
Yeah.
And Zynga didn't even realize that they were having this error.
Yeah.
Because they've never bothered to make an error page.
Right, it must have been going on for a little while, so they weren't checking it. They weren't monitoring their monitoring system, apparently.
Or they weren't monitoring for Error 500s.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I mean, am I just going off the rails when I just say, hey, can't Apache just spruce that sucker up? It is 2013. They could throw a few more lines of code in old Apache and make a better looking error page by default. Help us all out.
Well, the code isn't in Apache, and why is that Apache's problem?
I guess that is a supplied actual HTML page. All right, so they need to fancy that up. Page. Maybe CentOS or a Red Hat could just put a little logo on there. Maybe a gradient, maybe a marquee.
A lot of distributions do, right?
Yeah.
It'll have big CentOS logos. This is a fresh install of Apache.
Yeah.
But they don't always
welcome
do it
to your new Apache installation. Yeah.
But mostly, I would say that's not Apache's problem. Anybody who's using this in production is supposed to replace those with their own error pages anyway.
I know. Yeah. It just seems to happen. You still see them. I mean, it just seems crazy to see them.
Well, remember, Internet Explorer used to hide them if the page was less than so many bytes, and it would show its own thing.
Yeah, sometimes, I don't know what, I think maybe it's only Google apps or Google sites, but sometimes in Chrome now, I get the app is unavailable. When I'm going to a website, I get the app is unavailable, like in this custom Chrome page. Have you seen that? You don't use Chrome, do you?
I don't use Chrome. Yeah. Interesting news. According to the speed test, the latest version of Firefox has finally surpassed Chrome in speed again.
I saw that. I like Firefox a lot. My main problem is that there is UI lag between when I have a bunch of busy tabs. So sometimes during the show,
that's what was fixed in the newest version.
UI lag?
That was the entire point of version 22.
It's not just rendering, it's the UI itself. I think that needs to be broken out into its own process or something. I don't know.
But the UI stuff specifically is what they changed in 22.
Hot diggity. I'm going to give that a go, Alan. Hot diggity. Speaking of something else I want to give a go, should I mention...
I don't get that much interface lag, but maybe that's just because my Firefox runs off an SSD.
No, I'm on an SSD. I wonder if it's Linux, to be honest with you.
Could be. I admittedly have more trouble running Firefox under BSD than something else.
Yeah, because I wonder if it's... I don't know what it is, but Chrome does not suffer the same issue. So
yes, well, Chrome does a bunch of different things, but yes.
All right, I want to take a minute to thank our second sponsor this week, which is outstanding news to report right there on its own, and of course that is Ting.com. Go to TechSNAP.Ting.com to take advantage of a special offer.
People at Ting.com as well.
What's that?
I said Happy Canada Day to the people at Ting.com.
That's right. They are a bunch of Canadians up there.
It's an interesting point that because of the way the restrictions on mobile stuff work in Canada, Ting can't actually sell this same service in Canada.
Well, not yet. I wonder if one day.
I'm hoping soon.
I've been loving it. I've been using them since the beginning of the years, and they have been absolutely awesome. No contracts, no early termination fees. And I thought maybe, I don't talk about this very often, but if you're in a group or a small business, or if you're a developer or a tester or a support person that needs to have multiple lines, but sometimes you have devices that sit idle for a little bit. So a developer, I think, fits this scenario perfectly. You have several different Android-type devices that you need to test on. And it is much easier to do real-world testing when you have cellular service on those. Or, in my case, I sometimes will have multiple devices when I had multiple clients that had different types of devices, and I wanted to be able to support them. This is where Ting can be extremely beneficial for somebody in that type of scenario. Because the way Ting works is you can have unlimited devices. It's just a flat $6. You don't have to get a whole pool of minutes for every device you get, and it adds $30, $50 to your plan. You pay one flat rate. So say, for example, take my plan, $33 a month. I pay that, and then if I add another line, it's just $6. So I have 3 or 4 devices now on my line. It allows me to use multiple devices to do testing. I don't feel guilty. I can strategically use the device I need to use for that particular task at hand, and then I don't have to worry that I'm sitting there paying this outrageous bill. It's a great way to also to just keep a device that's sort of a backup device. Maybe it's a travel phone. Maybe you use it as a business line, but you don't take a lot of calls, and you want to have a separate number for your business. You just assign it to a Ting device, and it's only $6 just to have that line there for when you do need it. It's really super handy. Ting is great. And another aspect if you're in a business or a group is they have awesome tech support. Ting hires the folks in the field who are already helping people with their cell phone problems, and then brings those people on as Ting technicians. You can give them a call at 1-855-TING-FTW anytime between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., and a real person who is empowered to fix and solve your problem will answer the phone. This is awesome when you're in a group or a family setting and you don't want to have to sit there and deal with these nitty-gritty things. You can just give them 1-855-TING-FTW. They call that, and they will take care of the problem right there. You're not going to have to worry about them having to suffer with a phone tree or any of that kind of stuff. When you combine that with Ting's absolutely fantastic control panel UI, where you can see exactly where your bill is at, exactly where your minute usage is at. It's really
compared to my phone companies. Ting's is amazing.
Yeah. And here's another scenario. Like, so for example, say you wanted to get a line for your own personal small business, so you had a phone dedicated. Ting not only sells unlocked new devices, but they also sell unlocked used devices. And you can actually get a great phone from a flip phone for $43, which is great, contract free for $43, or check out Samsung Galaxy S3. That's still an amazing phone. You can get that for $207, contract free. You add that to Ting, and then you're gonna if you go to TechSNAP.ting.com, they're gonna take $25 off your service. For me, that almost paid for my whole first bill. If you're going to bring your own Sprint device, they'll take $25 off your service. So go to TechSNAP.ting.com. And a big thanks to Ting for sponsoring the TechSNAP program. It is a match made in Canadian heaven.
Yes. Also, Glitter Gulch from the chat room says that he saves $38 last month with Ting.
Thank you. Very nice, Glitter Gulch. Yeah, I've heard from a lot of people in the chat room and on the subreddits who've switched to Ting. I've gotten emails from folks who've really, really enjoyed it. I've got myself on it, and I've got my HTC One and an Evo, and then I've got my wife's Note 2, and my mom has a Note 2. And it's awesome. It's absolutely awesome. So big thanks to Ting. I'm glad to have them back on the TechSNAP program. They'd heard some good feedback from other TechSNAP audience members, and they said, we've been hearing great stuff, so we want to come back on the TechSNAP program. So if you haven't tried out Ting yet, go to TechSNAP.ting.com.
Yes.
I think you're going to like them. All right, Alan, we have a huge, epic, ginormous feedback segment. Are we done with all the stuff in the news segment?
Yep.
Yeah, I think we are. All right, well, let's jump into that sucker because it's massive. So you know what that means. It's time for the TechSNAP feedback. Thanks for sending your email to TechSNAP@JupiterBroadcasting.com or popping that contact link at the top of our website. Or even better, starting a thread in our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. And Alan, there is one way to get ahead of the line in the TechSNAP program when you want to get your question answered. Can you guess what that one way is?
Voicemail.
Yeah, voicemail. Absolutely voicemail.
Because we discussed this right.
It was on the live stream. I know.
I cheated.
Yeah,
I cheated.
That's all right. I was sending you a softball. So Michael sent in a voicemail. And I'll play it for us. Here we go. Let me pull it up here. He's attached it just by an email.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you two. Mike in San Jose here. And I love the show. Great attitude. Keep it up. Congratulations on 100. I've got a question for you. I've got a small office with mostly remote employees.
Okay.
Most of them have PCBSD on ThinkPads, of course. One, our hipster dude, has his Mac and he does our graphics, and we've got Oksana on a Windows 7 PC out at home doing our bookkeeping. My challenge is this. I want them to all participate on our local office network and use local IPs to access our devices. So, I'd love to do that with pfSense or OpenBSD. Can you help me set that up? Thank you.
It's a good question. That's an interesting challenge.
It's interesting. I was talking to Michael earlier, and he originally had wanted me to consult with the company and set it up for them. And I was like, well, if you just send it in to TechSNAP, I will tell you how to do it
for free.
And it won't cost you anything.
I know. Seriously, some of these questions, it's like, yeah, do you want to just hire us? We'll come on site. And of course, we can't do that. That'd be impossible. But yeah, it's just a small example of the value of the TechSNAP program, Alan.
Exactly.
This is
you have
probably
no idea
something
how much
that
each of those episodes is actually worth.
Yeah, I know, right?
Insulting them.
Seriously, let's just both charge. We'll just charge our rate, and then we'll put it behind a PayPal button, and then once people pay what our rate would be combined.
Yeah,
and I'll even discount the editing.
I don't think many people are going to be able to pay a couple $100 an episode.
No, not if we're both charging. We might more than that.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, so I'm sensing a little pfSense OpenVN solution here. Am I right, or are you thinking a different direction?
Yep. So I just to see. When he asked this question, I hadn't ever done this myself with pfSense before, although I know my business partner did something kind of like it with a site-to-site VPN with pfSense. But it was years ago, and it was an older version of pfSense. Anyway, so I just logged into my pfSense box, and then there's this VPN menu, and under it there are 4 types of VPN, right? You have IPsec, L2TP, PPTP, and OpenVPN. And in the question they had specifically mentioned OpenVPN, partly because it works on Windows, Linux, BSD, and Mac, and so on.
Yeah, lots of software support for it.
Yeah, PPTP is popular because the client's built into Windows and
Mac.
Probably the other OSs and BSD. But as we've discussed on the show before, there are a number of problems with the PPTP protocol, and you probably shouldn't use it.
Yeah.
IPsec, there's lots of headaches on how to set that up and so on.
Well, and I'm more comfortable with OpenVPN because it is open source.
Yes, and on top of that, it's just super easy to configure. So that's what I went with. So you click on the OpenVPN link there in pfSense, and you create a new one. They have a nice little wizard that walks you through the process, including like creating the certificates and stuff. Which when I set up my OpenVPN manually in the past, it was a lot of work.
Yeah,
but basically, to do what he wants to do, where all the machines appear on the same LAN and they're actually inside the same broadcast domain, this will use more traffic, but it allows things like Windows file sharing to just work. Right? Anything that's based on a broadcast just works. Normally with a VPN, what you have is what's called a routed VPN. And what that means is only packets specifically destined for some other host on the VPN will go through the VPN. With a bridged VPN, it basically makes your computer part of the network as if it was physically there.
So that's the key part. It needs to be a bridged VPN.
Yeah, depending on what you're doing, but yes. The advantage to a routed one is only traffic specifically going to another machine goes through.
So if you want to be part of a LAN, you're a bridge. If you want to have 2 separate networks that are connected, then that's a routed VPN.
Basically.
Yeah.
Because, if you have a bunch of Windows machines, there's all this chatter that goes on between them all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And having that going over the VPN to all these people in foreign countries where the internet's really slow can be a problem. Right? So it really depends on what you're trying to do.
Right.
But yeah, so when you're creating the OpenVPN, you have 2 options for the type of virtual adapter it uses. There's Tune, T-U-N, and TAP, T-A-P. So Tune is basically layer 3. It's an IP tunnel, and basically it can only do IPv4 traffic, right? And it's routed, and so there's it doesn't pass broadcasts and so on.
Right.
Or there's TAP, which basically is a layer 2. It simulates an Ethernet card. And so you can do ARP broadcasts and IPv4, v6, old NetBIOS stuff, play video games, whatever, right? TAP gives you the layer 2. And that's the one you have to do for bridging, because when you're bridging interfaces, they have to be at the same layer, right? So in a regular network card and a TAP interface are both layer 2. So basically you set layer, you enable or choose to use the TAP interface instead of Tune. A bit more overhead there, but it allows you to do the bridging, basically. You should also use UDP instead of TCP, mostly because when you're doing a VPN, you're taking whatever packet would normally go across the network and then wrapping it in another packet, right? So if it's TCP and you wrap it up in UDP and send it and it gets lost, TCP will automatically send it again anyway. But if you use TCP as the lower layer, so you're taking a TCP packet and put it inside another TCP packet, that means if it gets lost, you're going to have the retransmit happening at the lower level and possibly, if it takes too long, happening at the upper level as well. And it just causes a lot more latency. Right? It's basically the definition of buffer bloat or buffer bloat. So it says, choose tap mode and just make it UDP. And basically at the bottom, there's the option to bridge DHCP. When you check that, it means instead of the VPN giving out a different subnet, it'll treat the machines as if they were on the local LAN, and they will get an IP from the regular DHCP server and be part of the regular local LAN instead of a different subnet.
That's awesome.
And then you choose what interface to bridge to. Normally, that'd be your LAN interface. At my house, there's a home LAN and an office LAN. So I can say this VPN connects to the office LAN network, not the home LAN network. You can also restrict VPN clients to a certain subset of your DHCP range, right? So like normally if you say, it's like 192.168.1.100 through 150 or your DHCP range, you can give the VPN clients in a separate block so you can easily tell who's who or make special firewall rules about that.
Or, that's what I was going to suggest, is maybe even QoS, right? To apply QoS to these sets of IPs, and that way...
Right. Although, once they're on the local LAN, less of the traffic goes through the PFSense. Anyway. You can also control the number of concurrent connections, how many people you want to let connect to the VPN at once. And then there's also an option for duplicate connections. Do you want to allow the same person to connect twice? And then you can also control whether two different people on the VPN can talk to each other. In routed, the default is off. For bridged, you probably want that on because that's the whole point, right? The advantage also of using the wizard in PFSense is that it will automatically create the firewall rules to allow the VPN stuff in and out, right? So that it'll allow the internet connections to come into
through the actual firewall.
Where normally you'd have to configure that yourself.
Now, did you know that they have how to set up a bridged OpenVPN setup on the docs.pfsense.org site?
They have a couple of different how-tos.
Okay.
Some are for the older version of PFSense.
That is a thing, isn't it? That does happen on their site,
but I found a nice guide that's based on PFSense 2.1 beta.
Okay.
Which means it'll probably live a little longer.
Is that and that's in the show notes?
So I linked that in the show notes.
Awesome.
But the instructions, other than a couple of the options are slightly different, those instructions will get you through on 2.0 as well.
Okay.
Basically, on 2.0, there's a patch you need to install. But it's bundled up as a package. So if you go into the package management system in PFSense, and you can find it's called the TAP fix, and it fixes this specific bridging feature, which was broken by a change in OpenVPN. And so it's a little package, you install it, and then everything works.
Great question, Mike.
Yes.
Great question.
But basically in total, it should take you half an hour to set this up. And everybody should be happy.
There's a lot of advantages, like
I guess there's one other setting in there. It's called Redirect Gateway. That controls whether the default gateway on the client machine becomes the Office VPN or not. Depending what you're doing, you may or may not want that, right? If you don't have it on, then it means only data that's going to the LAN will go over the VPN. If you turn it on, all internet traffic will go over the VPN to the PFSense box.
Oh, that's a big deal.
Right. Now, specifically, Michael's question, he didn't mention it on the phone, but when he was typing the text to me, he said specifically he wanted people working from home
to use their connection to go out to the net.
To look like they were connecting from the office when they were going to the internet.
So he wants their internet traffic routed over the VPN.
It sounds like it.
Okay. I mean, I would not.
Normally you wouldn't, because it's basically always going to be slower that way.
Yeah.
But there may be certain situations where you do want.
Yeah, and if you throw in some caching, I don't know, maybe, especially if you had PFSense on the other end and you did some caching there, that might work too. I just wanted to mention to Mike too, one of the best advantages to everybody looking like they're on the same LAN is my wife and I have been really enjoying. I don't know what the technical term is. Pigeon calls it bonjour messaging. I don't know, Alan, if you ever looked at this. It's built into the Mac OS X messaging program, so my wife's Mac can use it. And then on Pigeon, you add a bonjour account. And it's all done by auto discovery, and all of the instant messaging is done from machine to machine. It doesn't route through any service. That's why you have to be on the same LAN. But it does a
right, that's in the same broadcast domain, and that's
it does a DNS, like that. I forget what but the dynamic DNS broadcast that it does to find all of the systems that have this service on their machine, and then it finds each other very fast. As fast as Pigeon opens, it finds all the machines on the local LAN, and then you can initiate chats that are completely off the record because they're from workstation to workstation. And once everybody's connected, that's a great way to have secure chat.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So great. Good luck, Mike. Let us know how it goes.
Yes.
All right. So how about we get to Meta Aaron's, I think of Metatron probably, I don't know. From our subreddit. He submitted a question that I thought I just wanted to kick around. VirtualBox and VM images. He said, I recall Chris talking about a website that you can download virtual machines for testing purposes, i.e. an Ubuntu server with Apache and MySQL already loaded. Anybody name this site? Now, the site I was talking about was Turnkey Linux, and in the comments, we also got virtualboximages.com, which looks really cool. So
the one I used to use for QMU was called OSZoo.
That's what I was going to ask.
Because it has all these different OSs, and most of those weren't pre-configured. VMware has a directory of what they called VMware appliances.
Virtual appliances, yeah.
Virtual appliances. Yep. That was the ones you could run with VMware Player for free.
Mm-hmm. And now you've got virtualboximages.com, which is kind of the same thing.
There's a bunch more stuff like that.
And there's also ovfappliances.com.
Yep. OVF is the file format that's generic.
Yeah, between the virtualizers.
Yep. And what was PCBSD makes pre-built PCBSD VMware and VirtualBox images, although they won't have, Apache pre-configured or anything, but...
Yeah, so good luck. And if anybody has any suggestions, I'll link to that thread. And if you could just go into the thread in the show notes and just toss your favorite website, and I'll circle back next week and see what people recommended. All right, another Michael writes in. He says, Chris and Alan, love the show and the feedback section. My question today comes from a project I've been working on for several weeks. Get this, Alan. Only our audience. An iSCSI bootable Windows 7 and other operating systems on both physical machines and VMs. Just moments ago, I narrowed down my problems to the fact that Windows PE and the Windows installer use DHCP for their network configuration and then set up a static route to the iSCSI target through the gateway. My default router, which is a pfSense box, does not send packets back onto the local network, resulting in a broken connection to the iSCSI target. I require the gateway information for the other running aspects of the system, so removing the gateway information from the DHCP server is not an option. It's recommended that the router forward the packet sent to the gateway back onto the local subnet to solve this issue. My question today, how do I direct pfSense packets back to, how do I direct pfSense to direct the packets sent to the gateway back to the local subnet? Thanks for the show and feedback on this issue.
That's a bit weird. If a machine has an IP address in the same subnet, it doesn't go through the gateway. It would use ARP and talk directly to the other machine. Is the Windows machine that's trying to boot iSCSI in a different subnet than the...
So it says the Windows installer uses DHCP for the network configuration and then set up a static route to the iSCSI target through the... So
right there's the problem. It wouldn't need a static route if the iSCSI
is on the same LAN.
Server was in the same subnet.
It must be on a different subnet. It must be.
But then pfSense would route it. But pfSense is saying, I'm not going to send a packet back out the interface it just came in on.
Right. I mean, if it's on the same LAN, it doesn't need a default gateway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think you might be misunderstanding what's actually breaking. By default, I think pfSense there will send an ICMP redirect saying, stop sending the packet to me, send it directly to this MAC address instead.
Yes, it does.
And I guess Windows PE is not understanding that.
And here's what he says. Here's the blurb I think he's pulling this from a how-to he's following. If the default gateway is required for booting, then you can configure the router to forward packets back to the originating subnet. For example, if your router is using Shorewall, then adding a route back option should fix the problem. So if the default gateway is required for booting, say, why is the default gateway required for booting? First of all, first question. Then you can configure the router to forward the packets back to the originating subnet. This doesn't make any sense.
It seems exactly. It seems very strange.
Yeah, because you're right. It shouldn't. The default gateway could be anything if it's talking to the iSCSI system that's on the same LAN.
Well, yeah, but the default gateway has to be in the same LAN as the IP of the machine as well. Mm-hmm. So it's like, why would you send packets to the default gateway to talk to another machine that's beside you?
I'm wondering.
That's like using mailing a letter to communicate with the person that's sitting beside you at the table.
Right. So I wonder if but so to answer his core question, I don't know of a route back setting on pfSense, but if anybody does, maybe they could pass that along in the comments.
Well, you can disable the ICMP redirect with a sysctl, but yeah, that's just weird. Like, there's NAT reflection where you're trying to connect to, when you try to connect to your external IP, pfSense will mangle the traffic to make it work. But
I mean, you know what I would do, honestly, is because I'm lazy, I would have just turned off DHCP services on my DHCP server, set up a temporary DHCP server.
You can do a DHCP reservation that has different settings, saying for this specific MAC address, return this data via this
that's an
separate
interesting approach
configuration.
too. Yeah, that's perhaps better than my approach, but
Yeah.
that's interesting. I mean, that's honestly, I just would have lazy guide this. I just would have been like, boop, boop, temper, because everything's going to have a lease for a few days anyway. So
That doesn't make any sense.
I agree.
I would like to find out more about why the Microsoft.
And you know what? Our chat room filled with 290 experts right now. Nothing. Nothing from the chat room. Just no help at all. All right. Well, should we move on and see? Maybe somebody can send in an answer and we can answer it next week.
Yeah, but mostly it seems like it might possibly be a misunderstanding of what's actually happening.
That's what I think.
That doesn't seem to make any sense.
I'm willing to accept that maybe Windows PE does something just completely buffoonery. So that's why I'm like not calling him completely out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But if it has to use ARP to find the MAC address of default gateway, so why can't it find the iSCSI server?
Strength in our chat room says, I think he just has some other reason he wants a redirect and he made up the rest of the story. I like it. So improbable we're calling him out. Well, Michael, let us know what you figure out, or if anybody has some suggestions for Michael's.
But yeah, there's a sysctl to disable the ICMP redirect, but I think that will just make pfSense ignore the traffic rather than actually. And
that ICPM, but see, that's a function you want on your router. Yes. So I don't know if you want to turn that off. Saying,
why are you sending this to the router when you could just talk to the person directly? They're right over there.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we have another pfSense question. I love this. Our audience. I love this because, they know what's up. They know what's up. So Ryan writes in, Chris and Alan, just to follow up on the pfSense bandwidth question I submitted a few weeks ago. Remember when he had done this series of tests and was getting like these really kind of awful results? So I listened to your recommendations and started digging around in the settings for hardware offloading and similar options. I believe that was your suggestion, Alan. I even went as far as changing the bootloader comp and added some specific settings for the EM driver for the Intel NICs. Nothing really made a difference until I enabled the polling option. According to the pfSense forums, the polling option uses free CPU cycles instead of standard interrupts. I am now able to achieve over 940 megabits a second through the pfSense box, even with PF Blocker, RDGraph, Snort, listening to 3 physical VPN instances, LCD proc, and 2 open VPN services running. He's still managing to get pretty good through. But also I wanted to include that I'm using Intel CT Desktop PCIe NIC, which are only $33 on Newegg. Mention the fact that you guys have affiliates there. By the way, we have affiliates if you guys want to buy hardware on Newegg. Just get our Chrome or Firefox extension. Just want to let you know.
ThinkGeek has a July 4th sale going on right now. Use our affiliate code for that and save 20%.
Thank you to Mars Base in the chat room.
Yes.
That's right. If you have, remember we have a ThinkGeek affiliate link at the bottom of our website. If you click that before you shop, take advantage of ThinkGeek's holiday sale, I guess. I guess it's the holiday sale?
Yep. Okay, so for polling, basically the standard way a network interface card worked before polling was invented about 10 years ago in FreeBSD was every time a new packet came in, the network card would put up an interrupt flag saying, hey, CPU, I need attention to process this packet.
Right.
So when that was happening, 10,000 times a second, that's a bit of an issue, right? It would dominate the interrupt. And basically, it's doing a little bit of work at a time, a whole bunch of times. So basically, the CPU is constantly being interrupted with what it's trying to do to go pick up a packet every time one shows up. So they invented polling. What polling does is, based on the frequency you set, the default's 100, but they recommend you do 1,000 if you're latency sensitive, is 100 or 1,000 times a second, it will go to the network card and say, do you have any packets for me to pick up? Because asking the network card if they have any packets 1,000 times a second is a lot less work than the network card saying, hey, I need attention 5,000 times a second.
Right.
Right? Because you can do more of the work at once and there's fewer context switches. And that's, so it uses a bit more CPU, but it definitely lowers the interrupt time that's, munching up your CPU. Also, the higher end Intel cards, the ones based on the IGB driver, now have multiple queues. So instead of all the packets waiting on one processor, it spreads them out across all your processors. Oh. The default is 8 queues per NIC, but I have some machines that have 4 NICs and 24 CPUs.
Yeah. Whoa.
And so on.
He followed up, Ryan did. He said, just wanted to let you know that your advice helped. I learned something, and thank you for that. To end on a comedic note, my wife sat down with me for the first time to watch your last episode, and to my surprise, she enjoyed it. After the show, I asked her what she thought, and her only response was, why is Alan's keyboard so loud?
Because I bought a really expensive one specifically because it was loud.
It's got those springs in them. It's got springs.
It feels really good.
People, in the YouTube comments every episode or so, people ask, hey, what keyboard does Alan have? And I think it's so funny. People are buying that keyboard, never have seen it. They hear you type, and they go out and they buy. We should just put it in the show notes. Yes. We should put it in the show notes.
You need an affiliate linked version of it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's the Razer Black Widow Ultimate. Although you don't need the Ultimate adds the backlight, which is an optional feature.
You need the backlight.
The first one I bought didn't have it because I didn't want to spend the extra money.
But you like it, though, don't you?
Yeah. Well, then I bought a second one because I was going to have a machine downstairs for work and upstairs for not work, and I was like, well, I want exactly the same keyboard.
Yeah.
Because A, I love this keyboard,
and
but
muscle
B,
memory.
Yeah, if you move one of my keys around, it's going to drive me insane. I was like, well, then I guess the one upstairs for home should have the backlight because, I tend to sit in the dark except for when the show's running.
Right, you do. I call Alan on the pre-show and all the lights are off in the house.
Yes.
What's cool, too, is if you have the keyboard tray at your desk, when you slide the keyboard under the desk, like there's this glowing light that comes out from the desk, which is really cool. All right.
Also, the backlight's adjustable on this one to like 3 or 4 different levels, including one where it just pulsates if you just want your computer to look cool while you're not sitting at it.
My my laptop has a whole like color calibration wheel I can do to set the the colors. It's like a rainbow.
My laptop just has 3 brightnesses for the backlight. They're quite a bit different than the backlight. Like the numbers don't glow. There's a light that kind of glows from underneath the keys through the gap. It's enough that you can see and type in the dark, though.
But you have don't you have a Think Light?
Yes, and then the fourth option is Think Light, which is like a light beside the webcam that just shines a bright light on the keyboard.
Actually, I like that.
Yes.
Although
sometimes I wish the bright light was pointed at you so you could use it as a light source for the webcam.
They should totally do that. All right, well,
would you want to look into the webcam when there's a bright LED shining in your face?
That is exactly what I'm doing right now. That's how I do my green screen. And it is looking into the sun. I walk out of the studio.
I will admit that was a big change for me.
Yeah,
being in the studio that one time was just
it's very bright
all the
in
lights
here.
And the green lights. It's like you need gunners to sit at this desk.
See, I have behind me. There's this gray screen. In order to make the green screen effect work, I have a green LED that is very bright because it has to send green light all the way across the room. And then it has to reflect off little glass beads in the gray stuff and then bounce back to the camera. And then, of course, there's big lights in front of me, big lights behind me. Yeah, there's a lot of lightage going on. But, of course, I'm in the wilderness. Big studio lights and stuff. Yeah. So somebody whose name Drew and is mysteriously handsome and perhaps a little Bitcoin knowledgeable writes in, I have some questions about how DNS works locally. I know this may possibly vary depending upon router firmware. I'm running DDWRT. It might a bit, but it shouldn't. Right. So I'm just looking for some general info. Do most home routers cache IPs for domains? I have a static DNS set up on my router, and my PC appears to query this router for IPs. If they are cached, how long until the router queries the static DNS again to make sure the IPs haven't changed? Is this usually done on demand from a client machine or checked by the software in the home router in a certain interval? How long is the timeout when the first static DNS server doesn't respond? How quickly is it moved to the next DNS entry to query, etc.? Right. So
by default, most home routers don't do a cache. They just take the request off the LAN and then forward it to your ISP, where there's a DNS server that does the caching. Although some will have a caching name server. So regardless of that, whether the caching name server is on your router or at your ISP or at Google, if you use Google DNS, right, 8.8.8.8, those servers, when they call, say scaleengine.com to look up our domain, our server, who's authoritative since it's our domain, says you can cache this record for X seconds. Our value is like 20 minutes, but some places will do 6 hours or 24 hours or various different amounts, right? So whoever owns the domain that you're looking up gets to decide how long servers are allowed to cache that information for. Some places cheat and expand that.
Yeah.
Have a minimum where they won't cache it. When they cache it, they'll just keep it cached for a long time. Although most of those have finally gone away.
Unfortunately,
OpenDNS has a big policy right on their site saying they promise never to do that.
my home router does do DNS caching. And one of the first things that fails when my router needs to be reset, which it needs to be reset about once a week, is the DNS stuff. And it's this slow sort of degradation where maybe all of a sudden not all the machines show up in my network list, and maybe like websites are very slow to load, or all of a sudden certain pictures don't load on a website, and then it goes on to full on nothing works. So a long time ago, one of the first things I did is when I had Fios for like 2 weeks, and I saw this going on, and because it was actually worse earlier on before they did a firmware update, I set up my own local DNS server just to avoid this. So all of my stuff, luckily my router lets me specify what gets handed out via DHCP for DNS. So I use my own local DNS, and it's so much, it really is faster. When you use a local DNS server, it actually makes the websites load a little bit faster. Because after you've used it for a little while, it'll have a pretty good database.
After the first time.
Yeah. After a week or two, like all the standard places I go, the lookups are, as fast as it is to send a packet across my gigabit network.
Right. Now, another thing you brought about was the refresh and stuff.
Yeah.
By default, when one of these records expires, the router doesn't go and look it up again until until a client says,
request.
"Hey, what's the address of this?" So it doesn't go and try to refresh that data by default. It will just let it expire and ask it again, right? Because part of the point of this was to prevent as many queries having to go to the authoritative server as possible.
Very good. Thanks, Drew, for the question. All right.
Yes.
Next one came in from the TechSNAP subreddit. Captain's Bikini. No, actually, it's Captain K Bug. Hey, guys. I'm thinking of starting a side business. This is a great question. Running websites, own cloud, or some other ideas. I'm not really sure yet, but I want to do something. Currently, I have a few websites hosted on a shared hosting provider that uses cPanel, and I hate it, and I think it could do better. What are some of the mistakes and successes you've been through as a self-employed contractor and a hosting services provider? Can you give me some advice for people considering doing this? What is the right way to go about going into business for yourself? I wish I could use your GoDaddy codes for those awesome deals, but most of the people whose websites I run are still boycotting them for their ads back in the day. But I have used your Newegg a few times for a rig build and things like that, and for an Nokia N9 and N900. Well, thank you, Captain. We ask you support us in any way you can. So this is an interesting question, right, Alan? Because it's like one of these, if you're going to start to go into the business where you're providing email or potentially online file storage for people, there's probably a few things you should think about. What, in your experience, has been some of the most important things to think about when people have kind of come to you and sort of handed you the jewels and said, host this for me? There's a big responsibility there you have all of a sudden.
Yeah, and deciding what level of service you want to provide and what level of service is beyond what you're capable of providing, right? Like if you're going to have how much uptime are you actually going to be able to get, right? Everybody says they're going to try to get 100%, but
how will you accomplish that?
Yeah, and are you going to do backups, or you say that the client's responsible for their own backups? And depending on how much they're paying, maybe it makes sense to make them responsible for their own stuff. And, there's lots of things. I don't know any particular traps to watch out for.
I would
more
start
on the contractor consulting side. You have to watch out to not try to do everything for everyone. People will ask you to do stuff that you have never done before, but you're like, well, I could learn to do that. And that can be fine, but at some point,
deadline.
It tries to help to focus on being the expert at certain things rather than trying to do everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially, I like his idea
of
of
beginning.
OwnCloud.
It's hard. Yeah. At the beginning, it's hard to turn away work, especially when you really need it.
Yeah.
But at some point, you get to the point where you can finally say, that's not what we do. Sorry.
So I think he should focus and get really good at that one thing. And I think the idea of a hosted OwnCloud installation could potentially become more popular as people kind of want to move off of larger providers who they are uncertain about. And I would say he should start somewhere.
What I've been working on.
Right. Yeah. Basically, right. Start somewhere friendly, somewhere safe. Like Scale Engine is the perfect example of somebody who's in a great position to offer a service like this. But you are ready to offer it at a wide scale. I would argue that Captain K Bug here needs to focus very specifically on maybe 1-2 clients. Make sure you've got that figured out, because they will sort of beta test the whole process for you. You'll figure out how to do the billing. You'll figure out how to do the hosting, how to isolate the data, how to secure it all, how to keep it backed up. And then once you've kind of gotten the elements worked out there, keep it very focused. So that way you can work those things out. You can afford to screw up. Allow yourself the ability to screw up, and then move forward, and then offer it out there. Then you'll have experience. You'll have the billing figured out. You'll have all of the data issues figured out, and then you'll be ready to roll it out to more people. Right.
Yeah. That's a big thing. Is don't try to do everything right at once.
Don't launch some website that's like, come on everybody, for $9.99 a month, I'll get your own cloud. Don't do that.
Yeah.
All right.
Because then you'll have 100 people mad at you because of some small growing page you had in the beginning. Whereas, if you can keep that smaller and then grow it afterwards.
Right. Boston wants to get personal. He wants to get up in your business. He says, what's your backup? I'm basically a longtime listener to TechSNAP. Not basically. He got the basically in there. I love the show and listen to it basically all the time. Basically, I have one or more less philosophical questions. So, okay, I can't keep doing it. It's full of basically. Do you have this email up over there? Did you see how many basically this guy has written? He says, I can't even read it. I can't even read it. His question is, what's our backups? I can't read the rest. What do you do for backups, Alan?
Bacula.
Surprise.
Basically I do Bacula, and then rather than some kind of bare metal restore or something, I reinstall the base FreeBSD and then restore the files that I want, mostly like user local and user home.
And Alan always likes to give a good plug for TarSNAP, too.
Yes, TarSNAP is also a good option because it doesn't require, Bacula is overkill if you have less than 3 machines to back up. So if you're just backing up, your home directory or something, TarSNAP is really good because it's the very small differentials based, you're compressing it and you're diffing it, and it's encrypted by you before it goes to TarSNAP, so they can never screw with it. But if you're doing a lot of servers or whatever, then Bacula is nice. But that requires you to own the storage and everything. So Bacula is overkill if you don't have enough machines to, set up an SQL server and a storage server and a director and a bunch of clients and all the other.
I would put Crash Plan high on that list. I kind of wish they would sponsor some of our shows. My wife's been using them for over a year, and she essentially gets unlimited storage that she can back up her photo, her music, all that stuff, gigs and gigs and gigs and gigs to the Crash Plan site. And they also offer machine-to-machine syncing, so you can just have a family member you're backing up to. I like that. So we've used that quite a bit. I've used Jungle Disk on and off. But if you're doing your own, rolling your own, I also, I've done Bacula deployments for multiple servers and multiple desktops, and it was really very, very good. Bacula is probably my favorite. I've worked with a lot of different backup programs. Backup Exec has been a bane of my IT career, and Bacula has always been a pleasure to work with. So I would also put a hearty recommendation in for Bacula. But if you just want to do image backups and stuff like that, I got a couple that I love just real quick is Mondo Rescue, love it, and also Clonezilla, good for imaging backups. So go check those out. Yep. All right, I Clonezilla stuff all the time. So Snake Doc writes in, with a secure LAN messaging server. Hey, Chris, I just watched TechSNAP episode 115 and wanted to comment on your thoughts about a secure LAN messaging server. As Alan mentioned, I also think an XMPP with SSL may be your best bet. Check out OpenFire and Spark for your XMPP server and client. OpenFire is amazing and super simple to set up. On your mobile, I like to use Xzabber on Android. It's pretty full-featured mobile XMPP client. And it happens to be free. Cheers! They're both open source, too.
Yeah, the advantage of those over the Bonjour type thing you're doing is you can set up a server to allow clients to access it outside of your house.
Mm-hmm.
So, like Angie's phone, when it's not on the Wi-Fi at your house, can't do the messaging right now, right?
That would be very nice. Yeah, right, exactly. It doesn't work off of LAN.
But so with Jabber, if you could expose the Jabber SSL port through your firewall, then people could connect from outside over SSL and have the messages go back and forth.
If I do decide to roll a chat server, I think OpenFire will be the one I go with. I've used it before at clients. And the other thing that OpenFire is doing right now, which is really cool, is they're keeping real close integration with WebRTC, the standard that the browsers are working on for video chat, and they're trying to integrate that in with their system. So I think OpenFire has a nice future ahead of it, and that's how they're going to bring some of the video chat messaging features. All right. Next question comes in from Developer J, or Develop J. Maybe he's a Java guy. It says, hey there, tech snappers. In the next 20 days or so, I will get a new desktop machine and plan to put FreeBSD on it. Hey there, Ellen. I used Linux for some time now, but I want to learn FreeBSD, and I have some questions about ZFS. There will be one SSD and 2 standard hard drives. I want to use ZFS on all of them. As far as I know, this is question number 1. With ZFS, I create a ZFS pool, so there is no partitioning. Every partition will take as much as it needs from the pool. Is this correct, or am I wrong?
Yes, that's how it works. Although there could be partitioning. You can, when you add the devices to the Z pool, those could be partitions. So like the way I've set mine up is each of the disks has, the boot sector at the front, a 6 gigs of swap partition, and then the rest ZFS data partition. And so my Z pool is actually made up of these ZFS data partitions rather than the whole disks. So they have the boot sector and all that fun stuff. But yeah, the main advantage with ZFS is you have this pool of free space, and then each, they're not called partitions, they're called data sets or file systems, uses up what it needs out of that, and basically all your free space is available to all of your data sets. And the advantage with that is it avoids free space fragmentation. Right? The problem I always had with partitioning before is I'd have like 2 or 3 partitions, and I'd have like 50 gigs free on each of the 3, but I had a 75 gig thing I was trying to do. And there wasn't enough space on any one partition. Mm-hmm. Right? With ZFS, you don't have that problem.
All right, second question.
So the other thing he was, I talked to him more about this specific question on IRC actually. One possible way to set that up with having the SSD and the 2 hard drives is, one way would be to create 2 different Z pools, one on the SSD for the base OS and the other one for the storage, or partition that SSD so you have 8 or 16 gig partition to use as the ZIL, right? The intent log, or a log device basically. And that's where all the writes will happen, and then they'll be flushed to the hard drives after. So that makes all your, writing to the disk faster. And then the rest you could use as an L2 ARC, a cache device. And that means files you access a lot will be copied from the hard drives into the SSD so that when you read them, they're faster. And this basically would use the SSD to the greatest effect by copying the data you use the most to the SSD. And then if you change what you use the most, the SSD, what's on the SSD changes automatically. Whereas if you try to do them as 2 separate Z pools, then you have to move data back and forth manually.
That's really cool. All right.
So he could do the 2 drives as a mirror or something, and then use the SSD to boost the speed. Although with only having the 2 hard drives, he probably doesn't necessarily want to have them only mirrored. Probably wants more space. So then you could just stripe them, but then, there's some danger in that. Because if one of them dies, then all your data's gone. So it depends on what kind of setup you want to do.
Couple more questions.
If you had more drives, then you could do a RAID Z or something.
He still has more questions. You ready?
Oh, okay.
Okay. Next question, and the reason why I want to answer this, I'm just curious what you think. It's a question of our time. He's got 16 gigabytes of RAM. Do you feel he even needs a swap drive?
Yes.
Okay. Question number 3.
Partly because ZFS will use all of that if you let it.
Right.
And so swapping.
People
stuff
tell me all the
that's-
time not to use swap, but it just seems too soon. It's too soon.
No. Well, even then, the free RAM could be better used as cache than holding a program that's not running.
Yeah.
Right? Like, there's daemons on my server that have not used any CPU in 4 days. Having those swapped out is perfectly fine.
Yeah.
And then that RAM that's freed up is now being used to make every file operation faster.
That's exactly how I look at it.
The FreeBSD policy is free RAM is wasted RAM.
All right. So here's the third question. You ready?
So all my servers have quite a bit of swap. Even I've seen other configurations where people do like only 512 megabytes of swap.
Yeah.
Which is enough, but some of my servers that have 512 megs of swap are using most of it.
Yeah.
Even though the server has 24 gigs of RAM, it's still using 300 of the 500 megs of swap. Just because there is inactive stuff, and why not swap it out and use that RAM for something useful?
For the two hard drives, I was thinking of a ZFS mirror. It's not that I have some super valuable data, I just want to see how it works. If after some time I need to reinstall the system on the SSD, what will happen to this ZFS mirror? Does it need some kind of reinitialization or something?
No. If you created a Z pool that's just those two disks mirrored, then for safety you export it first, but you don't have to. You can just import those on any machine that runs ZFS.
And his fourth question is really, just do you have any recommendations for things he should check out before he loads his first FreeBSD machine and desktop?
Not specifically.
The guide, maybe?
At some point, the FreeBSD handbook chapter on ZFS will be much, much thicker when I finish rewriting it. I've basically added 20 sections to it. Although most of those sections are empty now because I haven't written all the content. I've just decided these are sections that need to be added.
Okay. Well, there you go.
So yes, the manual is good. It will get much better.
Mr. Radiotron writes in with a FreeBSD follow-up question. Hi, Crescent Allen. A while ago, I wrote asking about ZFS under Linux, as I wanted a good DLNA transcoding solution for my media as I'm streaming to a PS3. Thought I'd share my experiences to help others out there who want to do the same thing. After your feedback, I decided to move to vanilla FreeBSD install, so I spun up some VMs and got cracking. First, I got my PS3 media server running under FreeBSD. This took a bit of doing, as at the time the FreeBSD binary packages were still down, and I had to piece together a few different incomplete guides. After getting this working in the VM, I installed PS3 Media Server on my hardware and ran into stability issues and intermittent audio sync problems. Eventually, the system was rendered unbootable, and I had to start from scratch. Then I tried
The audio desync is just a problem with transcoding, especially with variable bitrate audio. I've seen that happen even using PS3 Media Server on Windows.
Yeah, it can happen.
It depends on the source material as well.
Yeah. He said then he tried MediaToom. That didn't go well. But he said, finally, I landed on running PS3 Media Server within an Ubuntu VM inside VirtualBox on the FreeBSD server. I used VirtualBox guest editions to allow the VM to access the media on the ZFS dataset, and it works great. In my opinion, this is the easiest and most reliable way for some semi-noobs to get great DLNA transcoding media servers for use with their PS3. I like that he linked his original question, too.
Yep. The other thing is, it's not quite ready yet, but Plex Media Server is working on support for FreeBSD and specifically for FreeNAS.
That could be awesome.
So you can drop a plugin on your FreeNAS, and then you'll have Plex Media Server and be able to stream your media.
That could be really great.
I don't have these problems because I run a computer connected to a 40-inch LCD instead of a TV.
Right, you just play it in VLC.
My machine's FreeBSD with KDE and VLC, and it connects over the network and plays the files.
I've essentially, what Mr. Radiotron has done too, is I have Ubuntu VMs that sit in front of my FreeNAS box. But one of them right now is essentially only doing Plex.
Right.
So if I could move that Plex server back onto the FreeNAS box, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
That'd be great. All right. Is that all the feedback we have for this week, Alan? Look at that.
It is. That was a lot of feedback.
We got through. So you can send your questions to TechSNAP@JupiterBroadcasting.com. Hit our contact link and then choose TechSNAP. That's another way. Or start a thread in our subreddit at links.techsnap.tv. Or you can send us a voicemail, and then you get right to the front of the line. So, all right, everyone. Well, that wraps up the feedback segment, so that must mean it's time for the TechSNAP Roundup. Welcome to the TechSNAP Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup are stories that didn't quite fit at the top of the show. We still want to talk about them. They give you some links. You can go check them out on your own, too. A lot of these links came from our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. Now, in the first story this week is yours, and it includes a very handsome graphic for you audio listeners. You should go check out the link in the show notes. What is it?
So McAfee released their report called Needle in the Haystack. Basically, they surveyed 500 senior IT decision makers and asked them how quickly they're able to detect data breaches. And basically found that more than half of firms take over 10 hours to detect a security breach. And now, this is what people say.
I was going to say, that's a lot better than I was expecting.
Well, this is what 500 senior IT decision makers, whose job is probably on the line based on this, say how quickly they can detect.
Yeah.
And so 35% say they can detect an intrusion within a minute.
Uh-huh. A minute.
Yeah. And 36% say within an hour, 22% within a day, 5% within a week, 3% say over a week, or difficult to determine how long it would take them.
Yeah, the thing you always have to ask yourself is, what are they classifying too? Do they mean a virus infection is a breach and then the AV software took so long to detect it, or do they mean somebody actually logged into your network?
Right. But I would say the 3% of people who say it would be difficult to determine how long it would take them to detect a breach are the only ones being honest.
Right. Yeah, especially a sophisticated breach.
Yeah.
Interesting infograph, though.
Yeah. But it kind of meshes with that thing we had from the guy from Mandiant the other week, where he was talking about, you have to look at what amount of time it would actually take you, not to fill out some survey, but to actually know how are you going to detect when someone does something, and how long is it going to take you to notice,
and how will you track back what they've done.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right. That's a good reason to, one way to find out is not some survey, but go download Kale Linux or backtrack Kale and hack yourself. Find out. See how long it takes you to discover it.
Metasploit and so on.
Yeah. Throw a little Metasploit. This one, anybody has a Ubisoft account, perk up for this one, because there was an email that went out to customers asking people to reset their passwords after a security breach. This is on Ubisoft's site. They say, "Hello all. We recently found out that one of our websites was exploited to gain unauthorized access to some of our online systems. We've instantly taken the steps to close off this access." I love it when they say that. "During this process, we learned that data was illegally accessed from our account database, including usernames, email addresses, and encrypted passwords." No indication of what type of encryption, though. No personal payment information.
Passwords should never be encrypted. They should be hashed.
What's up?
Maybe they meant hashed when they said encrypted.
You never know.
Or maybe they were doing it wrong.
Yeah. I wish they would get out the details.
They were compromised. I'm guessing they were doing it wrong.
Was it? Here's the question. Was it an encrypted password? This is on the Ubisoft ubi.com site. "Passwords are not stored in clear text, but an obfuscated value. Those cannot be reversed, but cannot be cracked. In particular, the password chosen. If the password chosen is weak, then they say it won't be cracked. This is the reason we are recommending. If the password is weak, it could be cracked.
So it sounds like a hash.
Yeah.
But was it just a plain MD5, or was it like an SHA-256 crypt? Or?
They say that they are cryptographically hashed. That's what they say.
But a plain MD5 is pretty lame cryptographic hash
I'm
nowadays.
thinking, Alan. I'm thinking that's what it is.
Well, an SSJ1 or SSA-256, that's worse than LinkedIn. Come on.
Now, this one has a little bit of a security implication. This Android story that's come out about being able to get the malware through invalid digital
basically,
signatures.
the packages that come to your Android with other people's software in them are cryptographically signed, so that you know that it hasn't been modified since the person who signed it. Turns out there's a bug that allows somebody to modify the package without breaking the signature on every version of Android since 1.6 Donut. So that's only about 900 million devices.
Jeez. Now, this is a horse that I've kicked.
The point of a digital signature is supposed to be you take a hash of the package, and then you cryptographically sign that hash with a private key and publish the public key. This allows anyone to use the public key to check that the hash matches they hash the package and check that hash against the one that was signed, and they know for sure the package has not been modified since the person signed it.
Yeah, but they say they're able to modify. They say they can modify executing code in an APK that is installed. normally a red flag because it would break the signature, but we can do it by not breaking the signature. We have the ability to upgrade any application on a phone and get access to data. We can make malicious Facebook updates by inserting Trojan code into the real one without breaking Facebook's signature.
Yeah, so they can either modify Facebook's real APK without it being detected and inject malware, or they can just make a totally new APK and release it and have it look like an update for Facebook.
Right. Picture like a mobile website. Oh, we've detected you need an update. Click here to download the latest Facebook update.
Just a little man-in-the-middle attack. Your phone jumps on the Wi-Fi at a coffee shop, and somebody set up man-in-the-middle and makes your phone think it's getting an update from the real site. Now, most of those probably use SSL and might get detected, but it might be possible for someone to cause your machine as part of the regular update mechanism to download an update that's not real, but appears to be.
Now, as pointed out in the chat room, for this really to be effective, you'd probably have to have side loading turned on.
No. If someone can do a man-in-the-middle attack, then they can
that's true.
Send you an infected one via the real update channel, not just side loading.
And I would say that's crazy paranoia, except for we've covered stories where they've invented entire coffee shops out of the thin air in order to capture people's passwords. So obviously people are willing to go to drastic measures. And this is the dead horse that I've beaten on Coder Radio a lot. I mean, Michael, Dominic, and I have really chewed on this, but I believe this is Google's biggest failure with Android, is you have this long trail now of devices that are not getting security updates. And this is one of many major vulnerabilities that affect the Android operating system that are not being patched on devices that were being sold on the market as recently as 6 months ago. This is unacceptable. This isn't
necessarily Google's fault because they've released updates. It's the phone companies and the carriers that won't update it.
I know.
That's why the Federal Trade Commission has been pushing, like we talked about it before. They were like going after HTC for not updating some of their phones.
I know. I just wish it could have been structured from the beginning of Android so that this could be.
There should be some contract terms from Google. You can only use Android if you promise to actually update it.
And the only reason why I harp on this is
90 days of an update coming out, you have to have your version out. Otherwise, you're not allowed to be Android.
We talk about network security on this show so much. We talk about server security so much. We talk about personal security. We talk about desktop security. But meanwhile, we're all walking around with these full-fledged computers that are connected to the internet all the time that know more about us than probably any of our desktops do. And some of them have years-old vulnerabilities in them now that are not that difficult to exploit. And it's kind of unacceptable because it endangers the rest of the network. So even when we know how to load ROMs, we know how to use Nexus devices, we know how to have current Android phones, so our audience is not affected. This is an issue that falls on deaf ears when I preach it. But the fact of the matter is the people that are the most susceptible to this kind of problem are the people most likely to be using an out-of-date Android device, and they are a threat to the rest of the network. They endanger the network as a whole, and that's the part that upsets me.
They could hog all the data usage so you can't get a decent amount of data over your plan and cause other problems. But also, if you're a business and your employees have phones and they come in and they get on the office Wi-Fi, then if their phone could be used to basically as a Trojan horse, literally a Trojan horse, to bring a virus into your network and infect the machines that are behind some firewall so they can't get viruses and stuff from outside. But by infecting the phone of an employee, they're going to bring it in, it's going to jump on the office Wi-Fi, and it's going to spread.
And lastly, I just want to point out, Apple is kicking Google's ass in this regard. I think this is something like 90...
There have been plenty of vulnerabilities in iOS, but yes, the difference is that Apple, because they control all the devices, can actually force updates.
It's something like 94% of all iOS devices are running the latest release of iOS. Alan, something like 94% of active. How
does that work? Because they have devices that can't run like the newer version.
I don't know. Maybe it's crap. But even if it's half true, it's dramatically better than Android. It's dramatically better.
Yeah. I understand if an original very first iPhone is running the newest version it can run, does that actually have all the security fixes or not? Is the question.
Well, so in the case of iOS 5 and 6, they'll so take iOS 7 that's going to come out in the fall. It'll install on the iPhone 4, but I don't think it'll go any further.
Right. So will that mean that will they stop updating 5 and 6 for the older hardware?
With their desktop OSs, they continue to do updates for a while. So I don't have any old iOS devices. I don't know.
I'm just wondering how, do they get the actual security fixes or not.
I think they do for a while. For a little while, yeah. All right, well, some good news for Nginx fans. Some of the top websites on the web, like the top 1,000. Am I reading this right? It just became the most used web server among the top 1,000.
Yeah, so basically the percentage of websites in the top 1,000 running Nginx is now surpassed. Nginx makes up more of the top 1,000 than any one of the other.
That's awesome.
Web servers. So obviously it was Apache before, and now it's Nginx.
Coming in at almost 35%.
But also part of that could be it can be Nginx in front of Apache.
A lot of people do.
But even then, Apache's making a difference, a rather big one at times. But Scale Engine's been using Nginx since 2009 when we started, and my business partner discovered it in like 2005 when nobody had ever heard of it before.
Yeah, you were probably one of the first people that I associated with a lot that talked about it a lot back, for a while now. But now it's like.
And at EuroBSDCon this year, Sergey or Igor, the guy that invented it, will be there. Get to talk to him.
We should get him on the show, Alan. That'd be cool.
I can try.
Yeah, you gotta. All right, I want to talk about this next story because in the context of Zynga and all of the breaches we've talked about, this is something that I've kind of suggested before on the show. A California Attorney General has said that it's time to crack down on companies that don't encrypt their data. Sort of like it's your responsibility. If you're holding these people's private information, you need to have X level of encryption, and if you don't, well, you're liable.
Right. The problem with some of this stuff is how will it be implemented?
Right.
Because they're going to specify that you have to use some commercial encryption or something silly like that,
and how fast will it fall out of date?
And also, if they specify that you have to encrypt passwords, I'm going to beat somebody to death with a hammer. Because passwords should be hashed, not encrypted. It's not the same thing.
Right.
And so on and so on. But basically, the key stats from the report is that the average breach incident involved information of over 22,000 people. The retail industry reported that most data breaches in 2012. So the most commonly breached places were retail industry, so stores and so on. 26% of all breaches were from stores. And finance and insurance companies made up another 30% of the places that were compromised. More than half of all the breaches, 56%, involved leaking people's social security number. Outsider intrusions account for 54% of all the data incidents, with 23% occurring at a merchant, like a skimming device or something. But yeah, so it's 45% of the incidents were from outside, meaning 55% of the data was stolen by people inside.
That's not surprising. That's really not that surprising.
Yeah, and 23% of the data breaches happened by someone having a skimming device at a point-of-sale terminal. Yeah.
That does seem to be a pretty major vulnerability.
Yeah.
This next story, I included it because I've heard a lot of people recommending CryptoCat to our different shows. And I have not looked a lot into CryptoCat, but I did find this kind of debunking post about CryptoCat. It's pretty rough on CryptoCat. It says if you use CryptoCat from October 17th, 2011 to June 15th, 2013, assume your messages were compromised. Also, if you are the person you are talking to has a version that has a time span, then assume your message is also being compromised. Lastly, anyone involved in CryptoCat are incompetent. He goes on to identify several areas in CryptoCat code and implementation that he takes on issue with. If you are using CryptoCat, I just wanted to make you aware of this. You can go check out the roundup links and read this. It's very harsh on CryptoCat. And I've heard from a lot of you out there, so I think it's getting a lot of usage. So it's probably worth just reading it, just so that way you're informed. I am not a CryptoCat user, so I am unaffected. Have you checked it out, Alan?
I don't even know what it is.
So it's a secure private chat system, but my main issue with this kind of like depends on like a browser plugin, but it's an encrypted message, so you and I could essentially have a private off the record chat that would all be encrypted. But this blog kind of brings some of that into question.
Yeah, basically they're using all the standard encryption stuff, like Diffie-Hellman, elliptic curve, RSA, and so on, but they're implementing it incorrectly.
Right. Yeah. And there's even like comments in their code that says, well, this is doing X. And then it turns out like it doesn't do that at all.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's all this stuff is new. So whenever it's new, you kind of have to assume you need to be a little cautious.
But it reminds me of these posts on Colin Percival's website, damonology.net.
Yeah.
Where he talks about, using standard encryption is great, but you have to understand it to implement it properly.
Right. That's a big part of it.
Because, don't roll your own, but also if you're going to use somebody else's stuff, you have to know how it works first. Because if you're using, RSA encryption with a key size of only 512 bits, that's too small. Like even 600-bit RSA, you can crack that in 5 months on a couple of AMD Opterons, which you can rent from Amazon.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Speaking of computing clusters, there's been a lot of talk in the news about metadata tracking phone calls. Well, there's a little thought experiment that you found that kind of shows kind of the information you can gather from metadata.
So basically, this politician in Germany sued the phone company to get the last 6 months of his metadata, and then went through it and saw what information was actually in there and what he could glean about what he had been doing at the time.
Wow.
Mixing it with information like his tweets to see where he said he was, and combining that with the data of, the phone company knowing where his phone was and stuff, and what you could actually learn about a person just by looking at this metadata.
Yeah, and I love that he's got a map.
The government keeps saying it's just metadata. Well, what does that mean? What can you learn from just metadata?
Yeah, and he's got a map that you can speed up or slow down
metadata,
here.
Right, it's showing his movements.
Yeah, it's really cool. He's got a chart that sort of it graphs it out on the horizontal axis, and then he's got a map that plays back, and you can speed it up, and you get the different time ranges, and it shows you where it's at in the metadata collection. This is fascinating stuff, and anybody who's played with Google Latitude, you kind of get an idea of what you can track. And that's creepy. The metadata is...
Well, this one's also tracking who he calls and stuff, right? Because it's phone metadata.
Metadata is really all you need. If you can just say, well, Mr. Fisher, you placed a call to the co-conspirator, Mr. Jude, on Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific at jblive.tv, we believe that you were doing a podcast at this time based on the duration of the call and the time of the call. That's all they really need.
But when you can also cross-reference that with your tweet saying, hey, we're starting a podcast.
Well, and location data, too. Yeah. Right? Yeah, we can see that he did it from this location. Yeah, great link if you guys go check it out.
But it's a great example of what you can do by taking the metadata and combining it with public information like tweets and Facebook pages. And some of that data, even if it wasn't public, if it was private, if the government can subpoena that, then they can build this more and more information.
If you haven't heard of Bitcoin, this might be a reason to check it out. This is an example of where Bitcoin users are unaffected. MasterCard and Visa are going to start banning VPN providers. In fact, they've already started. Have you seen this?
Yes, although an update at the bottom of the page says, comment from Visa Europe said it wasn't them that blocked it. So the claim was that the payment provider for iPredator, which is the Pirate Bay's VPN service, told them that they wouldn't be able to use their payment service for VPN service anymore.
Yeah.
They said it was because of Visa.
Not
when
too
questioned about it, Visa said it wasn't them, but the bank that houses the merchant account. So this is Visa takes the money from you, sends it to that bank. That bank the account belongs to the payment service, and then they pay out to the Pirate Bay guys. So that bank is saying they didn't want to deal with the money anymore.
Who knows?
But either way, it's either a bank or the credit card company deciding that you can't pay for VPN service or anything that involves anonymizing yourself.
And there was another VPN provider that got blocked too.
Yeah.
So it's not just one; it's a couple.
Yep. But if you go to sign up for any credit card processor, there's a long list of things you can't sell on there.
Right. And if they had, all they need is some way to link it to piracy or some sort of illegal, illicit activity.
It doesn't even have to be that, but some of them will just refuse to sell certain things just because the chargeback rate is high. And I wonder if that might be part of the problem with VPNs, is that people using stolen credit cards to pay for the VPN, so that anything that is tracked back to that VPN then doesn't tie to their credit card, right? Because a VPN is not anonymizing you that much if you're paying for it with your credit card,
right.
Because then there's a paper trail back to you still.
Yeah.
So if people are using stolen credit cards to pay for the VPN in order to use that VPN to do something they don't want to get caught at, then
they should be using Bitcoin.
Well, no, because you can't steal money with Bitcoin. That's part of the point of Bitcoin.
Oh, I see. Stolen credit cards. Oh, I see.
Right.
Yes,
and so
yes.
that might be a legitimate reason why the bank would
Yeah.
want to stop dealing with.
Yeah, if a
VPN
provider had a lot
providers.
of stolen credit card accounts, kind of a thing.
Yeah, or well, just a particular type of service. That's why most payment providers won't deal with any adult material at all, because people tend to claim that they didn't buy that.
Right.
And then
It's a big
pull the
nightmare.
money back. The advantage with Bitcoin is you can't, as the merchant, the advantage with Bitcoin is that somebody can't claw their money back.
Right.
With credit cards, they can.
And then
The
this
disadvantage with Bitcoin as the user is you can't claw your money back.
Right.
But
Have you ever noticed as like technologies kind of not sunset, but as they kind of reach maturity and maybe even decline in their adoption, like the CD-ROM, a lot of different things. Like an invention comes out, a modernization that like makes them so much better that if we all just stayed with that technology, like it would be awesome. I swear this next headline reminds me of that when I read about the big boost
little
that DSL could be getting.
yeah. So Alcatel-Lucent, who I think was actually the ones that originally invented DSL in the first place, have started demoing their gigabit DSL. So this uses existing copper infrastructure to do up to a gigabit, which isn't that big of a deal because I have that at my house. And it only does up to 100 meters.
Oh.
So it's not like your
That's a bit
traditional DSL network.
Yeah.
But it would allow you to upgrade existing DSL networks with fiber to the curb or fiber to the block.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Right.
So if you had for each neighborhood of, 100-meter circle around this box.
Yeah.
And you could probably extend that to say like 150 or so if you only wanted to offer 500 megabits or something.
Right.
Which
they
so
would.
then so you run fiber to the boxes at each street and then distribute via the existing copper there. So you don't have to run the fibers.
Which
to
saves
each
a ton of
individual
money.
person's house.
Not
Yes.
having to. I mean, that's why Verizon in our area. I'm lucky enough. I got fiber to the house, but they shortly after my house stopped rolling it out because of the cost of digging up people's yards and the streets. They were like Verizon had trucks. They were literally digging up the sides of the road, trenching in fiber.
I remember when the little town I grew up in didn't have any broadband.
Mm-hmm.
And then the nice little local cable company in the next town over started working on it. And so going back and forth on the bus to high school every day, I would see their trenching machine going down the highway.
Yeah.
And over the course of a couple of months, they ran the fibers under the side of the road all the way from the next town over to our little town.
Oh, that same thing happened in my area. That was watching them, knowing it was coming.
Yep.
I remember that.
I kind of felt really bad, though. When they got to the edge of town, the phone company came in, dropped a D-slam in the telco box, and lit everybody up with DSL about a month before anybody would be able to get cable.
Oh,
Totally ate their lunch.
that's dirty.
And I felt really bad because I signed up for the DSL because I wanted it now.
Yeah, I mean, it's high speed.
A couple years later, my parents switched over to the cable company because Bell Canada is evil.
Yeah, surprise.
But
Good times.
and that cable company is who I had here when I moved to the big city. But then they got bought by Shaw, and things changed a bit. And then Shaw just sold me to Rogers, which is basically the AT&T of Canada.
Yeah, it is.
It's actually 25% owned by AT&T.
Rogers, I think when I look at our stats, is like what a huge percentage of our Canadian audience comes from Rogers.
Rogers, Shaw, Bell, and
They're
Telus.
known for screwing with Skype.
Yep. Rogers is known for screwing with a lot of stuff. Although they got caught for it.
Yeah, your Skype seems fine.
Well, I'm still technically on the Shaw infrastructure. I've not been subsumed by Rogers yet.
Oh, geez, maybe.
But, in Canada, Rogers is called robbers because they steal your money.
Oh, all right. Well,
But anyway, gigabit DSL would be cool, especially for people that have DSL and don't have much hope of, don't have the density necessarily to get fiber to the home.
Didn't we have a story about
with only
modems,
the
though?
100 meters? With only the 100 meter range,
Yeah.
you're gonna need pretty decent density in order for them to want to do it anyway. So
Don't you remember as we were transitioning to broadband a story about like they found a way to get dial up to like 320 kilobits a second or something like that? Like I kind of remember like modems like right at the end as everybody was moving off of them. There was like some big breakthrough and I can't remember what it was now, but it seems like every technology like after it's been around for a long time we figure out this. I mean, look at hard drives, right? That's what hard drives have been all about. every major storage breakthrough we've gotten through has been that. But it seems like so many technologies, we move beyond them before we've actually realized their complete full potential. I don't know.
But I know I don't remember anything about dial-up modems.
Yeah, I don't really remember the
There's
specifics.
really not any way to do that.
No, it was horrible. It was living in the dark ages. We wouldn't be able to do shows like this.
But I was there for a long time.
You and I have just done a multi-hour. I don't even. It's 3:00. We started at 12:30, and we have kept an HD video Skype call the entire time. There's no
Going at 5 megabits.
There's no way that would have happened on dial-up ever. So
Yeah, I've sent you more than 4 million packets.
I'm not complaining. If you'd like to join us live, you should, because the live show is a lot more show. Join us 1 p.m. Pacific, which is
4 p.m. Eastern, 2000 UTC.
over at jblive.tv and jblive.info if you want an audio-only stream. We're often in the chat room, and in fact, this is 100% true. A lot of times, segments cannot start until Alan is done correcting someone in the chat room.
Oftentimes, it's just answering someone.
Right,
but if I don't correct them, then people will go away with the wrong knowledge.
Somebody asks a question in the chat room, and then somebody in the chat room answers it. And a lot of times,
that's close, but not close.
yeah, exactly.
Or also, don't forget about this other factor you might not.
Right.
But I also just quickly did the math. I've sent you somewhere between 3 and 5 gigabytes of data just for this show.
For one show.
Just over Skype.
Wow. That's pretty
For the
impressive, Alan.
2+ hours we've been on Skype.
That's pretty impressive. You know what's funny is if you think about it, so if you sent me 3 gigabytes, my camera feed is 120 megabytes a second, and yours doesn't look that much worse than mine.
Nope.
So it tells you H.264, man, way of the future. Well, or something like it. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
of course, there's like H265 already, so.
Boom. That's right. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's TechSNAP. We'd love to have you join us live or send an email into the show, techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com. Also, go participate in our subreddit. It's a great spot to engage the community. We've got lots of smart folks in the community that might be able to help answer a question or just give you some insight. I went in there earlier this week and I said, hey, guys, what do you think about some hardware for X? Got some great feedback. So I love links.techsnap.tv. You can check that out. Join us live over at jblive.tv or download the show Friday mornings. But, Alan, I think that's going to bring us to the end. So thanks for the great show, man. And, of course, thanks to you for downloading this week's episode of TechSNAP. We'll see you right back here next week.